Welcome to the Lawyerist Podcast with Sam Glover and Aaron Street. Each week, Lawyerist brings you advice and interviews to help you build a more successful law practice in today's challenging and constantly changing legal market. And now, here are Sam and Aaron.
Hi, I'm Sam Glover.
And I'm Aaron Street, and this is episode 172 of the Lawyerist Podcast, part of the Legal Talk Network. Today, we're talking with Brooke Moore about her virtual law firm's client service model.
Today's podcast is brought to you by LawPay, Spotlight Branding, and New Law Business Model. We appreciate their support, and we will tell you more about them later in the show.
So our Lawyerist Insider Facebook group is approaching now 700 members in a free online system for small firm lawyers to engage with each other and solve problems and ask questions of each other, etc.
And it's awesome and active, and it's really great.
One theme I'm noticing, though, and I've noticed this not just in our Facebook group, but in years of conversations with lawyers, is when people are making technology purchase decisions or thinking about buying anything for their law firm, it seems that frequently the first question they ask another group of lawyers is, hey, I'm using X and thinking about Y. Do you guys like Y?
Yeah.
As though crowdsourcing whether people like stuff is the right business solution to the needs of your particular law firm. And I want to encourage lawyers in our group and elsewhere to realize that generic questions to a group of lawyers about whether they like something or not isn't the best way for you to get the solutions you need for your particular firm.
Or the feedback you need. Yeah, I mean, usually, we have several product portals designed to help you narrow down the choices. But there are other ways to do it. You can ask around, what are the options people use? I'm just going to use law practice management software as an example because that's the one that comes up most frequently. It's usually, hey, I heard about, Practice Panther or MyCase or Clio or whatever. What do you think about it? And you're just not going to get useful responses to that, right? Like a more useful approach would be, okay, so I've looked at there are 35 things, I've compared their features, and I've narrowed down the must-have things in my practice. And so now I'm down to 3 or 5 options. And I'm a personal injury lawyer, and I'm also very heavily process-oriented, and I'm working on automating my intake. So now I can really ask, okay, of the firms who are heavily process-oriented with a sophisticated intake system, what is it that you like about these 3 options that I've highlighted if you use them or if you've tried them, and what is it you don't like? What have you found valuable? What have you found challenging? Now you're more likely to get really useful feedback that will help you decide where to put your time and energy in sorting out the options.
Yep.
And so I guess what we're saying is we're encouraging people not to take the easy, just, hey, what do you think about X, but actually to do a little bit of work before you start asking a question and really narrow it down a bit. So I hope that helps, whether you're in the insider group or asking in some other forum, but be smart about how you choose your technology. So now we've got a brief conversation with Joshua Lennon from Clio, and then we'll jump into my conversation with Brooke.
Hi, I'm Joshua Lennon, the lawyer in residence at Clio.
Hey, Joshua. Thanks for being with us today. And we are sort of celebrating Clio's 10-year anniversary. I know you Clio was launched 10 years ago at Tech Show and went into formal release in the October of that year, right? So that's crazy.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. 10 years for us, so we're going to celebrate the whole year, we figure.
That's awesome. So maybe, we can take some lessons from what Jack and Ryan learned by launching Clio 10 years ago and then getting it to today where it's a big, viable company with tons of users. Are there some takeaways that lawyers who are trying to build innovative practices or legal solutions could take away from the lessons that they learned, do you think?
I absolutely think there are. So if you're starting a new law firm or going after a new or emerging service or practice area, I think that there are lessons that you can take from Clio's hard-won success and apply it to your law firm. Like one of those first lessons that Jack and Ryan learned early on was leading the conversation. They felt that since nobody was talking about cloud in relation to the legal industry, that they needed to be the ones to step forward, just as lawyers should be stepping forward into their new practice areas or their new firms and really leading the conversation around why they're important and why they're the expert in them. Second thing that Jack and Ryan really wanted to highlight for founders of companies and law firms out there is that they shouldn't go it alone. They're childhood best friends. They founded a company together. They have worked together for years. And solo lawyers may think they're alone, but they're not. There are tons of great resources and communities out there that they can be a part of. Lawyerist Lab is a good example of one that's being sprung forward. Enterprising lawyers who are looking to will their vision into reality. And probably the last thing that they would highlight is that you should be collaborating with your customers. No company succeeds just by looking inward. And so law firms should be looking outward to their clients and making sure they're understanding their needs and their preferred means of working and applying their professional judgment to those.
I think those are some really good points, especially the last one. I think lawyers who have been practicing for a while are just getting used to the idea of building their practice around what their clients need and want from them. I know you've also talked to Clio users about what they think is going to change over the next 10 years. Maybe you could give us some of the highlights of what Clio users are looking forward to.
You got it. So we interviewed a ton of our users in the Clio Advocates community. It's just our personal user community. And what was interesting to me is while they had a lot of very specific recommendations, most of them really focused on the idea of going from kind of analog to digital in every aspect of the practice of law. So there were a couple things they talked about, like practices finally being paperless. And I know we talk about paperless practices all the time, but there's always a need to print something out, to sign it, to scan it, et cetera, et cetera. But they think the tools are going to be emerging to where from start to finish, you may never need to touch another piece of paper again in your law firm. And that includes things like online filing, the ability to start doing court appearances by video, which means all of your exhibits will be digital as well. And also making sure that there's kind of this just online push for technology with the legal space. They see it growing and growing and growing. Now, they went a little further than that, and they believe that it won't just be digital, but mobile-based. So much of our interactions with lawyers and the legal system will now run through a mobile device, and that will only increase within the next 10 years.
Very interesting. Clio's also done a lot of research into the present, what lawyers are facing challenge-wise, what's holding lawyers back. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can think about these as the challenges that you need to overcome to get through the next 10 years. Go to clio.com/2017 Legal Trends Report with hyphens in place of spaces. That's 2017-legal-trends-report. Thanks very much, Joshua.
Thank you, Sam. It's always great to be here.
Hey, I'm Brooke Moore, founder of MyVirtual.Lawyer, which is an online-only law firm providing exclusively limited scope representation services.
Hi, Brooke. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Sam.
And so I wasn't sure, but I need to pronounce the dot.
Yes, there's a dot.
MyVirtual.Lawyer. Perfect. I will do that. You know, I have a lot of questions, and I want to sort of unpack this concept and how you do it. But maybe the easiest thing to do would be to, I mean, obviously, if people want to go to your website, they'll get one picture, the surface picture of what it is and how it works. But maybe you could kind of walk us through the client experience side of things and tell us what's going on in the back end at the same time. I'm curious about the mechanics as well as like the client experience.
Right. So for the client experience, I'll start, I guess, with intake. So the way we intake clients, we try to drive clients to the website and they're able to schedule on our calendar there, or we have an 800 number that the clients can call and they can get scheduled there if they want to talk to an actual person. And that's answered 24/7, 365. We actually outsource that to a call center.
Oh, cool. Let me ask too, let me even back it up before they even get to your website. Are most people finding you from word of mouth or online marketing or something else?
We are about 3 years old, so definitely early on there was a lot of bootstrapping, a lot of heavy networking, so a lot of it was word of mouth. Now we are putting more money into marketing, so people are finding us on social media and through our SEO and marketing efforts.
Cool. Well, let me let you get back to the intake process.
Sure. So once they do that, they sign up for a consultation, and then they'll be scheduled on our calendar. It's just a 30-minute phone consultation. And so we get on and discuss with them on that phone call exactly how we work, because with us, there's a huge educational component because people don't really necessarily understand how our services work because it's not a traditional firm. So most people are used to going down to a traditional office, not necessarily having their initial consultation remotely. And they're also used to services being provided a certain way. So we explain that to make sure it's a good fit, because we also have to vet out our clients to make sure that they can handle the tasks that are going to be delegated to them. So once we're able to work through that in our conversation and determine that we're a good fit and if they want to move forward, then we enter them into our client portal. So we use law practice management software for that, and you can access that on our site.
What do you use?
You get emails. We currently use Clio, and we quarterly review all of our technology. So Clio plays really well with a lot of the other software that we use. So right now we use Clio.
I mean, I've when I try to distinguish the different options, one of the things I think about is with Clio, it's kind of like, it works as like a back-end framework. So you can feed into it from, a different intake system, and then it can hold the data and you can feed it back out to a document assembly program or something like that. I assume that's kind of how you're using it.
Right. So we store everything there. And even in our initial client agreement, we agree that communication goes through there because, it's very important to make sure that the communications are secured. And if we're communicating through the client portal and Clio, we know that it's encrypted, we know that it's secured, plus it's all in one place. So the clients really like that they have the ability, even if they get an email and they have to fill something out, we use intake 123 for our intake forms when we have questionnaires. So whenever they fill that out, it's automatically going to go into Clio, and then it's going to generate there. So we like that as well because it's not, double entry. So we're able to pull that info, and any documents that we have stored in Clio, we can actually, merge into that template and automate that. So we do spend a lot of time trying to automate the documents that can be automated while still, creating a customized experience for the client.
So I'm going to go off on a little bit of tangent here because
Sure.
You sound like the kind of person that would have a good answer to this.
We'll see.
I'm a huge fan of secure client portals. And you mentioned that, using Clio Connect feature to communicate and, add documents and things like that. Lots of software has this now. It's become increasingly common. I like to think partly because I've been beating the drum for it, but I hear lots of lawyers objecting that, it's too clunky and email is just easier. And I'm wondering, have you found any resistance from clients, or is it just a matter of being comfortable with yourself and telling them that's what we're using and then they bring it on board?
Right. Yeah, we don't really give them an option. That's just a choice. We explain to them, you're going to have this direct link to whoever you're working with at our law firm. And so it's going to be more convenient for you, in the middle of the night, if you think of something, you might necessarily get a response, but you're able to communicate with us. And clients have really taken to it. Clients are really used to using this kind of technology, and they're really comfortable using that. And I think maybe the resistance is kind of on the lawyer side. Sometimes I've spoken about client portals at bar associations and things like that. And I'm actually kind of surprised at how many attorneys, even people, I guess, that would consider themselves advanced technologically, don't utilize a client portal. And some of it is kind of how the law firm is set up. But there are a lot of attorneys that are using email. And for me, that's kind of scary because for the most part, these attorneys aren't encrypting their emails, and, because it's just a pain for everybody involved. And I think that would be even more difficult for the client because the client portal.
It's way easier to just use the client portal instead of trying to figure out how to put your emails into the software.
You can set it to where in the client portal, they're going to receive an email too. So they know to go check the client portal. So they're not always having to refresh that. They can go check it, but it's, the information is held securely. So I think it's extremely beneficial, for both parties. But I, almost think, there's a less liability if you're using a client portal.
So let me try to bring it back. It sounds like you do a lot of expectation setting up front. Here's how we're going to communicate. Here's the expectations we have for you. If you're going to use this service, here are the things that you get to do, and here are the things we get to do. And it sounds like you really try to set people up for this. And is that because it's kind of an unusual way to work with a lawyer, or just good practice?
It's efficiency on our part. It's good practice, and it makes it easier for us to assist you. But really, it's the way that we're set up, and especially because we're, providing limited scope representation services. It's not necessarily a new thing, but limited scope is new to the, general public, and even, attorneys and judges sometimes have difficulty understanding the scope of that practice. And so that's very important to us up front to make sure that they understand how that works. And because we utilize technology to provide those limited scope services, we do talk to them about the technology when we're introducing the limited scope in the services they're going to be provided, the services that they're going to be expected to do, administrative tasks, things like that. They're going to be delegated to them. So there is a level of technological competence that the client has to have. And most of these softwares that we use are very client friendly. So I don't feel like that's a barrier for most people, but there are expectations.
So is the client's interface with the firm primarily through the Client Connect portal in Clio or Clio Connect portal, whatever? Or are they using other things on their end that kind of count as the firm interface?
No, that's the primary way that we communicate. And the reason we do this and don't just send people even for basic things through the website is because, people don't necessarily know what they need. So that's kind of what differentiates us a little bit from, non-attorney third-party legal service providers that, provide documents. We're not just a document service. We talk to you up front and try to determine exactly what your need is. People don't necessarily know. We'll have people sometimes that will call us and they will need, it'll be a grandparent and they want custody. Well, really, they're needing a guardianship. So they don't necessarily know what they need. So even if the documents were available, we kind of talk them through that process. So we have that option up front. We also have an option to do a video chat. Typically, people don't utilize that.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's all messages or if there's some one-on-one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the phone call, because again, being virtual, we need them to know, hey, we're a person, we care about you. We're here to personalize this experience and make it as easy as possible for you. We know this is a difficult time. So we're there to do that part. But they have the ability, if they want to choose a video option, we can do that. Nobody ever does that. Sometimes our business clients do that. And if they're local business clients, sometimes we'll meet face-to-face with that because we do have some business subscription services. So, it's still about building that relationship. It just looks a little bit different because we're remote.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk through the decision to go virtual and construct your firm in the way you did. Was there a problem you were trying to solve, whether for yourself or for clients, or an opportunity that you saw that is different from a traditional practice?
Right. Well, kind of both. So I had some experience working remotely for a firm out of Pennsylvania. I had clerked remotely, so I was really comfortable using technology in a law firm setting. But I actually set up my own, hung my shingles, set up my own full service, general practice, brick and mortar law firm about a year out of law school. And I felt like it was really inefficient. I didn't utilize a lot of technology in my practice. I felt like it wasn't really serving, this middle class legal consumer. They couldn't afford the fees, even though our fees weren't just astronomical. They just couldn't afford the legal fees. The hourly, billable model just didn't really work for a lot of my clientele. So I was really looking for another way to serve that clientele. And I got involved with Arkansas Access to Justice, and they were really pushing the initiative to incorporate limited scope representation services. And I thought, well, this is a great idea. I'd really, like to do that. But then I decided, after researching, I read several books, looked into it, and, the research here in our state specifically, there are counties here. We're a very rural state in Arkansas, and there are counties here that don't even have practicing attorneys. And so people are having to go to other counties. So I wanted to be accessible to everybody because I knew I wanted to offer these services. And so it just kind of was a natural fit for me to look at going online. We don't have a bona fide office requirement here in Arkansas. So, I knew that wasn't going to be an obstacle, but there are different things that you have to look at because being exclusively limited scope. And again, the reason I really wanted to do exclusively limited scope is because not that I don't think, especially if you're utilizing technology and being efficient, that you can't do a hybrid practice where you're doing full service and limited scope. And I encourage people to do that. But I just really wanted to take that product and make that the best that it could be. And so that's why we exclusively decided to focus on that.
And when you say we, how many people are involved?
Right. So initially, when I found it's me. And so I was on my own for a couple of years. And in December, I brought on my partner, Laura. And so I do now have a partner. And we have a total of 9 people in the firm. There are 8 attorneys and 1 mediator. And so we are actually now expanding into other jurisdictions and utilizing independent contractor attorneys. So that's a little bit different than what you would see in a traditional multi-jurisdictional practice as well. But as far as going virtual, it was just about, being accessible and being available to people. People want the convenience of going online, and then also being exclusively limited scope. Like I said, the people have the misconception, I think, that limited scope means, low bono. and it doesn't. You still value your service, you value your time, you value your technology. You factor all those things in when you're considering your fees.
Right. It's not, because I think most lawyers think about trying to get their prices down in terms of, well, I'll have to just make less money for the same amount of work. And the whole point of limited scope is, no, you do less work for the same amount of money, basically.
And if you automate it, it saves you a lot of time. Yeah. So I decided that I wanted to do it virtually because being a little bit lower fee, because it's customized and unbundled, I knew that I was going to have a higher volume of clients. So I was going to have to keep my overhead lower. And so being able to go virtual has given me the ability, to invest in some of these softwares that I use to be able to really focus on building the law firm and not worrying about some fancy office or, rent and overhead like that, location, barriers to access that way. So
we need to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to keep talking about how the virtual law firm works and how you measure success. So we'll be back in a minute.
Did you know that attorneys who accept online payments get paid 39% faster on average than those using traditional payment methods? With LawPay, the only payment solution offered through the ABA Advantage program, you can accept client payments online, via email, or in person. No equipment needed. Visit lawpay.com/lawyerist to sign up and get your first 3 months free. Trust the only payment solution developed for attorneys and recommended by 47 state bars. LawPay.
The legal environment is more competitive than ever, and small law firms are feeling the pinch. With over 1.3 million attorneys in the United States and counting, it can be hard to stand out from the crowd. That's why Spotlight Branding helps lawyers become unforgettable. Spotlight Branding is a different kind of internet marketing company. They don't put their clients on the SEO hamster wheel. They don't ask them to burn thousands of dollars on speculative pay-per-click advertising. Instead, they're focused on the fundamentals of legal marketing that have worked for centuries. They use the internet to build a premium brand for solo and small firm lawyers. They put systems in place to create top-of-mind awareness, allowing their clients to maximize referrals and repeat business. It's the smart way to grow your law firm. Learn more at spotlightbranding.com/lawyerist. And if you're attending Lawyeronomics and would like to know more, stop by Spotlight Branding's booth, mention this podcast to receive a special offer.
If you've ever considered doing estate planning but think it's too dry and boring, or have been afraid it might not earn you what you need because you have to compete against LegalZoom or the dreaded $1,500 estate plans, check out the website estateplanningsrules.com to get a free guide that lays out step-by-step how some lawyers are regularly commanding average fees of $4,000 to $5,000 per estate plan, and you'll discover why regular, everyday people are happy to pay well for estate planning services that you'll love to provide. That's estateplanningsrules.com, brought to you by New Law Business Model, where you get to love being a lawyer again.
Okay, and we're back. And so, Brooke, I'm curious about how you just mentioned bringing on sort of attorney partners and expanding into different jurisdictions. I'm curious, on an ongoing basis, are you sort of constantly looking for opportunities to improve, testing new things?
Yeah, we always are looking for different ideas, kind of evolving the firm. There's not really a model for us to go by. We can look at pieces of other models. We just really, and again, being virtual, we have the ability to pivot a little bit easier. And so sometimes we throw things out there and they just flop. And sometimes we have ideas and they rock. So
what's an example of a flop?
I had originally thrown out some business plans that I had kind of created. I didn't really test those, which, that's important no matter what you're doing, is to kind of have a market test of what you're doing. But they just didn't pick up any traction. I really thought that was going to be a really good idea. But we have since revamped those based on feedback. And so they have gained traction now. But we just had to put it out there and see what the response was and figure out why it wasn't working and why we weren't getting clients in that specific service.
I mean, I like the emphasis on trying to figure out what worked and what didn't, because otherwise, I think too often people try something, it doesn't work, and then they just throw it out and decide they call it a failure and don't ever take it apart and figure out if there's anything worth salvaging there.
Right.
Looking at your website, I noticed one of the things that you've done is you've tried to, I think this is what you're trying to do, is, and my guess is because it's an online company and an online relationship, you've really tried to humanize it. Your attorney bios, for example, your team bios are awesome. I like that yours says not an asshole. I don't know if you've seen our community standards policy, but we have no assholes rules. So you're allowed on the podcast, I guess.
Awesome.
But is that what's going on? You're trying to find a way to balance. You're always going to be doing business with us online versus you still want people to feel like they're they know who you are and who your team is.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to be real. I feel like that's a problem. A lot of times attorneys kind of can be unapproachable. Even before I started doing that, that was the feedback I got a lot of times when people would come in, that they were so nervous. And I'm 4'11". I am extremely short. I'm the least intimidating person that you will probably ever meet. But it was funny to me that these people were so intimidated to come meet me. So I think it's just an industry thing. I think as far as our profession, people are nervous. A lot of times it's, very difficult situations. They're coming in and they're telling a complete stranger their business. So having that extra step being virtual, I wanted to set us apart. Again, we're not just a document service. It is a law firm. We do care about you. We are real people. We understand your issues. So it's very important for us to make sure that people know, hey, we're real, here's who we are. And I think that helps us build credibility and build those relationships.
Since you brought up the intimidation factor, I'm wondering if you've noticed a change. I guess maybe because your relationships with clients are kind of all in text, maybe not. But have you noticed that a difference between the way clients think of you? Like, do they think of themselves as getting a low-cost lawyer, and that makes you somehow less than the typical lawyer behind an oak desk in a full 3-piece suit and who charges $400 an hour?
Right. Now, that was a concern that I had early on, because I didn't want to look, and that's why we don't necessarily focus. We focus more on our convenience than we do on affordability. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason, because we want people to know, hey, you're going to get a quality service, whatever we're helping you with. But what we've really found, especially being limited scope, is that a lot of these people can't afford or don't necessarily have access to an attorney. So we're able to at least assist them with parts of their case, or give them some kind of legal guidance that they wouldn't otherwise have, whether it be they be out on their own or go into bankruptcy, spending money they don't have. So really, we're kind of almost their lifeline. So these clients have really been way more appreciative, I felt like, than clients when I was practicing in a traditional setting.
I'm curious. So how long have you been doing this now?
I started the firm in January of 2015.
All right. So you're about you're a little bit over 3 years in. How do you measure success? Do you have KPIs that you keep track of? And which are the ones that you really point to and say, yeah, we're killing it, or we're not?
We are just now really getting good systems in place. And I'll be the first to admit, just being me, it was a lot of testing and a lot of, being super overwhelmed and not tracking as much as I'd like to. And that's part of the purpose of bringing Laura on. We have really focused in on trying to figure out our metrics and exactly what works, what isn't working. Of course, we have our marketing people. They give us that information, so we kind of know where people are coming from, what's working there, what's not working, when we throw things out that way. But for me, as far as success, early on, I knew this was going to be something different. I was going to have to educate people, and I'm not just talking about the public. I was going to have to educate the bar, the judiciary. I was going to have to educate everyone how this is going to work. And so when I started, our rules were extremely unclear. It was basically, you can do limited scope representation. You don't have to have a bona fide office. That was about it. So people didn't really understand it at all. So over that time, I feel like I've helped to make aware. And again, I'll give a big shout out again to Arkansas Access to Justice, because Amy Johnson over there has done a phenomenal job of really educating and pushing limited scope representation. So, I think our state really has one of the most progressive limited scope representation rules. So we've had 2 changes since I started doing this to make it easier for attorneys to provide these services to self-represented litigants. So, I feel like that, to me, that is a big measure. And also, really early on too, I thought, well, I'm going to have to get out and I'm going to have to work on branding. I'm going to have to make sure people know that this is a thing, that you have this option. And so I went out and I networked, and I wasn't making anything, but I was going out and I was talking to other law firms and trying to build those relationships. So now we have these relationships where these attorneys are, sending stuff to us. So we have this collaboration. So for me, that's one important factor when I'm considering success is it being accepted not only by the public, which I feel like I've gotten a really good response there, but by the judiciary, by the bar? How are other attorneys interacting? And I have these other attorneys that are, trusting people that they turn away, or clients that they don't necessarily serve, to come to us. And so building those collaborative relationships have been really important to me, and in and out of the legal field. I mean, we have those relationships with attorneys, of course, but we also try to make those relationships with non-attorneys. And I feel like that has been very successful.
So you're sort of measuring trust as a proxy for success.
Right. And just because it's new and just acceptance, because when I first started this, I wasn't sure how people would trust an online law firm. I wasn't sure the reaction I was going to get. And of course, I get pushback and I get mixed reactions. But from the public in general, they have been very accepting. And I mean, even the courts, we have one court. I have never met this court clerk, but when she brings people in, obviously she can't give legal advice. But when they come in to file things and they have a mess of things in front of them, she is consistently giving them our number. And so I feel like we're obviously doing something right in their court. And we've even, had judges tell our self-represented litigants that they were the most prepared pro se parties that they had ever encountered.
Nice.
So to me, that is success. We're doing something right, making it easy for the clients. We're giving them access. We're getting positive feedback in the legal community. So that's kind of to this point how we've non-numerically considered success.
But what remains a challenge for you?
It's still there's still a lot of education. It's still making sure people know. A lot of times we have to kind of throw ourselves out here, like we offer family law services, and so people will come to us. Then we explain it to them because it's almost like if you go to Sam's and somebody's trying to show you a product and it's something you really need to see in person to learn how it works. Sometimes I feel like people don't understand it unless you explain it to them. So I feel like sometimes there's more hand holding. It's not really mainstream. And so that's where I run into problems, is that people don't know it's an option.
I mean, I think that's interesting because like the virtual law firm has been sort of floating around for more than a decade, I think. But
yeah.
It feels like it's never quite penetrated into the public consciousness or even in the legal community. I mean, I think it's weird that you're still having to fight for acceptance for this when, I mean, honestly, I don't even know when that Richard Granite started thinking about products for virtual practices, but it just feels like it's never quite caught on, which doesn't mean it's not viable, but it's a little discouraging that you still have to do a lot of explaining.
Well, and I think too, which is confusing for me, I don't get it or I don't understand how that works. I'm thinking, well, are you not utilizing technology in your practice? How are you using it? Like I know a lot of people that use Clio, they don't use the client portal. And I'm like, why don't you have it there? You're paying for it. Use the client portal. So I think it's the way people use it. And so they're used to, this is how their firm has done it for 10 years. This is how they were taught to do it. This is how we do our intake. I just think people, they get busy or they don't have time or they don't trust it. And they're concerned about technology. They're concerned about how to use it. I think a lot of times there's a misunderstanding that there might be more liability, but if you're following all the, ethical protocols that you need to be following, you're not any more liable than anyone else is going to be.
And it sounds like you're on the client side of things, you're controlling for that lack of understanding by where we started with really clear expectations.
Right. And one more thing too, that is a huge struggle that I have found is that professional liability insurers do not know what to do with us.
Really?
A lot of them will not quote us. A lot of it is the virtual model. They are confused with that. They don't understand limited scope representation, which is insane to me because that's been around for a really long time. People have been doing it. I feel like maybe they haven't communicated that to their, insurance providers, but that's a problem. Okay. We use independent contract attorneys, too many independent contractors, multi-jurisdictional practice. So you name it, we're just trying to bulldoze over all these hurdles all the time because, insurers will give us astronomical quotes.
Okay, insurers, get with the program. This is a normal thing.
Right. So that is a huge, that's probably one of our biggest obstacles is, trying to make insurers understand.
That's annoying and frustrating for you, I'm sure, but also for me, because I feel like we're still having to try to convince insurers to acknowledge the existence of virtual law practices. How much harder is it going to be to insure what comes next?
Very.
So,
yeah.
I think I want to circle back to something that I didn't let you talk about earlier, which was, what does it look like to be a lawyer providing services through MyVirtual.Lawyer? Is it heavy on document assembly, or does it look a lot like being a normal lawyer, except that you interact primarily through text?
Yeah, I mean, it looks a lot like being a normal lawyer, except for, you have the ability and the flexibility to work around your schedule. That was one thing that was really important to me early on. And I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but another reason that I really wanted to focus on a virtual practice is my husband is full-time Army National Guard, and we thought we were actually being transferred to D.C. And I thought, oh, Lord, I don't want to take another bar exam. So what can I do? Take this with me. And so when I was looking into it, fortunately, we didn't end up going. But when I was looking into it, I found that is a huge problem for military spouses that are attorneys, because they move way more than he's, full-time Army National Guard. We're not necessarily moving every 3 years, and a lot of people are. And so that was one reason I wanted to do that. So I thought, well, I need some flexibility. I have 3 kids. I needed to be able to work around their schedules. I needed to be able to work around his, demanding military career. What does this look like for me? So on my side, it made more sense for me to be able to do this because I knew that there was this gap of middle-class legal consumers that were not being served or maybe were underserved. And I wanted to fill that gap, and I wanted to be able to do that in a way that made sense with my life. And so that's kind of how that, came to be. And again, I knew being virtual, the client portal is the center. Technology is extremely important. So on our end, our attorneys are able to kind of set their own schedule. We actually have over half of our attorneys are military spouses, which was really important to me to, find these people because it's difficult when you're a military spouse. When you have to go, some of these states don't allow you to waive in as a military spouse. They don't have the military spouse waiver. They have the problem of they have to sit for the bar. You have that, you have to study for the bar. You have 2 chances to take it, then you're going to, wait for the results. You have to find an employer that doesn't mind that you're going to move in a year. You have to learn something. You have to move again. So.
Well, and for listeners' benefit, we actually did a whole show on Military Spouses JD Network with Josie Beets. It's really worth going and listening to that if the things that Brooke was just saying kind of resonate. I mean, being a spouse who is a lawyer involved in the military opens up a whole can of problems. A lot of them surrounding jumping from one jurisdiction to the next and trying to keep practicing. I mean, I think virtual law practice is of the solos who are in that bucket of lawyers. It sounds like solo and small firm lawyers anyway. It sounds like going virtual is a really good way to try and make that work out.
Absolutely, yeah. So in the Military Spouse JD Network is actually where I located all of the military attorneys that are on our team. So they're a great resource, but there's a whole host of problems, like you said, and I encourage people to listen to it because you don't know until you get into it how difficult it can be. But doing it this way, they're able to go ahead and, block off their schedule. And I mean, for me, I have a certain time during the day that I schedule calls. People have to get on my schedule 24 hours in advance so I can plan my day out. I have, time set aside. I mean, it's about time management as it should be in any firm, but I have time set aside where I draft and, obviously I'm working a lot, especially right now. There's a lot of administrative stuff, but it gives you the freedom and flexibility to work your own schedule. If you're, better at night. I work a lot better at night. And so I can work at night. It's easier for me. Some people are morning people. I am not one of those people. They can work in the mornings. So there's a lot of opportunities and we're available different schedules for different people. Laura is available nights and weekends. So sometimes we have people that it's not convenient for them during the day because they work and they can't get away to go even call a lawyer, let alone go down to a law office. So they can, get on the schedule at night or on a Saturday and have a conversation with Laura. So it's all about making this the firm for the middle class legal consumer. What is it they need? How can we, meet that need while also making sure that we're taking care of ourselves and balancing, what we want to do and being able to practice law the way we want to practice law for the benefit of our clients.
So, Brooke, you are going to be speaking at Lawyer-nomics on May 21st through 23rd. What is the subject of your presentation there going to be?
Yeah, we have a call tomorrow, so we haven't worked out all the logistics of who's going to do what. We're on a panel, actually, and it's about alternative law firm models. So I'm not sure exactly what they have in mind for it, but I'm assuming they're talking about other forms of revenue that can be generated from a non-traditional law firm model. And obviously, my piece of the panel is probably going to be virtual lawyering.
Well, that sounds like it'll be an interesting panel. And listeners, if you want to go to Lawyer-nomics, you can use the code FRIENDS150 for a $150 discount. Brooke, I hope you have fun there. It's in sunny Las Vegas, so I assume you will.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And Brooke, thanks for being with us today and talking about virtual lawyering and law practice. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Make sure to catch next week's episode of the Lawyerist podcast by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast app. And please leave a rating to help other people find our show. You can find the notes for today's episode on lawyerist.com/podcast.
The Lawyerist podcast is produced with help from Lindsay Calhoun and edited by Paul Fisher. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not endorsed by Legal Talk Network. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.